visibly emotional in that introductory press conference. What did it mean to you to be handed the keys to this program?
A ton. You know, it was just not the job itself, but just the thought of that was a little overwhelming, especially, you know, the 2 years that we had before. You know, my relationship with Bob, the way he handled me, the success, and then for it to all happen so quickly, it just, it's such an exciting time, but to see him step down and for he and that university have that kind of trust in me to be able to lead the program was a great feeling.
Well, I've heard you say, Coach, that Coach Stoops did a lot over the past year to help bring you along, help groom you. But then you also say it happened so quickly. So how much of a surprise was this for you? It's certainly a surprise to us that Coach Stoops was stepping down. How much notice did you have?
Oh, not much. I knew, you know, about around a week before that it was on his mind, but you just never know those things are real, and it got more real as it went along. But he knew coming in that I wanted to be a head coach at some point, so I don't think he was necessarily grooming me for the Oklahoma job. I think he was just helping me kind of in that journey to become one. And certainly the second year with him, as we got more comfortable, our relationship grew. I was able to go to him on more subjects, ask questions, and there's not a better person to pick the brain on than Bob Stoops.
Now, with you being such a young guy, how does your age play with the players on the team? Sometimes you have to battle with, you know, respect because you're a young guy. How does that work?
I don't think so. You know, the only time I really think about my age is when I get asked about it.
Yeah,
you know, it's
which
I
is
think,
all the time.
Yeah, you know, today a little bit more than normal, but you know, I think our guys just see me as a coach.
Yeah.
You know, and when I address the team or call a play or do anything that we do on a daily basis, I don't think, well, I'm 33, so I'm going to do it different. And in some ways, does it help you relate or maybe understand what they're going through or, you know, what trends are socially now? Maybe, but some of the best coaches I've ever been around can relate to guys and they're 55 or 60 years old. I think you either do or you don't.
Oklahoma has obviously had a lot of success lately, and yet a change this year in having the championship game. What will that mean to your team and potentially a playoff spot?
I think it's great for the league. You know, I know all the data behind it, the 13th point, you know, all those things, but I think more importantly, just having a presence on that last weekend with the best two teams in our conference is important. It's just the human element. And we're going to be unique, and we're going to be the only championship game that has a guaranteed first, the best and the second best team in the conference there, which I think we're going to be able to put our best foot forward, you know, in front of the country at that time.
Certainly a luxury coming in. Despite the fact you said you're only asked about it at media tables, I have to believe your age comes up in recruiting, on the recruiting trail as well, in homes. But one luxury you have is you've got a quarterback that's been there for a while. He's been a leader. Talk to me about Baker Mayfield. What kind of guy is he in that locker room?
Yeah, he's very, very dynamic. You know, what you see is what you get. He's got an incredible passion, not just for football, but just kind of for life. You know, one of those guys that, you know, kind of lives each day, you know, and doesn't hold back in any way. And he has the ability to get along with so many different guys from different backgrounds, and then on top of it, I mean, the guy's a great player. So he's a tremendous leader. He's been a huge part of our success last year.
What about his off-the-field issues? He had some trouble this past offseason. How are you guys handling that?
Yeah, you know, anytime we have something like that, we look at, is it a constant deal of behavior, or is it one isolated incident? You know, Bake has been great in everything we've asked him to do. He made one mistake on a very public stage when you're the quarterback at Oklahoma. That's part of it. But he's learned from it. He's bounced back, and I think he's even made it a positive.
You know, everyone knows you're replacing a legend. What things are you implementing to kind of change things, mix things up a little bit as far as the Oklahoma program?
Yeah, you know, I think some of it remains to be seen. You know, with the timing, the one thing I didn't want to do was rush anything that didn't fit with the schedule. You know, normally you take over a program, it's, you know, a January, you know, December type deal, and you've got the whole year to make those changes. So, and you know, had I taken a job somewhere else, I would have taken a lot of the same principles that we were doing at Oklahoma because I believed in them. I think, you know, I was very much in line with a lot of the same beliefs that Bob has as far as running a program. So there will be a few here in recruiting. You know, I'm sure a few on the field, but, you know, there's a lot of things going well that we want to just try to make just a little bit better.
Lincoln, I've talked to you a few times now here on various ESPN platforms, and I'm always struck by your calmness. You have this calm confidence about you. And sometimes in college football, we expect a coach to be this like grinder who runs at this like high RPM. Does that benefit you in this business?
I think so. You know, I was taught at a young age, you've got to, you know, even in situations that are important or or
Stressful.
yeah, exactly, where you're making big decisions, you've got to be able to take a step back and look at things like that. And at the end of the day, does you getting riled up or all that actually help? There's times it does. There's times as a coach you got to do it, but I think there's also times that you've got to be even keel so that you can do your job for the team.
Lincoln Riley hanging out with us here on First Take. Very excited to have you, and we wish you a ton of success this year in Norman
Thank you.
and beyond.
Stop giving him the side eye. You and this whole Texas thing.
We
man.
are wishing you
That's all right.
success.
That's all right.
Yeah, I wish you a lot of success, especially against that burnt orange team.